Hey everyone. Hey, I just want to welcome you to an interview I'm going to do here with Blank Arnold. Blake joined Vestrite several years ago, which we'll hit later, but I just want to introduce Blake. And Blake, I want to thank you for being willing to share your story. And it's not just going to be the ups. I want to talk about the downs as well, right? I want to about the reality of the business model and your experiences and kind of the things you've learned. So we can celebrate, some of the big payday stuff, and that's all great. But I want to talk about all of it. So I appreciate you being willing to be open and transparent, and don't feel for a second, oh, should I say this or should I not say this? Just if you're feeling it, say it. That cool?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Yeah, you got it. All right. So let's go back though before Vest, right? And before the model. So can you tell everybody what you were doing before you even stumbled across Vest, right? Like just give people a quick, background of you and kind of what you were doing.
Yeah, sure. So, prior to VestRight, I was not in real estate at all. So I was not doing any type of real estate investing, didn't know anything about it, other than, buying and selling some houses that I've lived in, right? Besides that, I really hadn't been in real estate at all. I had investigated a number of different paths, but never really decided to do anything. And I was in IT. I was specifically on the infrastructure side of IT, so, like, all this AI stuff that you're seeing nowadays, I was, like, building all the foundations for that, all the frameworks for it, and so, it was exciting. I've always loved IT since I was a young man. God has given me a gift for technology type stuff, and I recognized that at a very early age, and so I loved doing it, and I made really, really good money doing it. And I was like, "You know what? I don't wanna always work for somebody else." And so I'd always looked at some sort of strategy to get me to a place of saying, "You know what? I don't have to work for somebody else. Like, I can be my own boss."
Mhm.
And in steps well, really, I had a property that I owned that, was a bunch of land that I wanted to do something with, and I knew that it would probably make a really good subdivision, not knowing anything really. I just thought it would make a good subdivision. And so I was really trying to figure out, like, what can I do to make this property into a subdivision? And kind of in steps best right ultimately, right? I was perusing the internet really late at night one night when I couldn't sleep, and we had my wife was pregnant at the time, and I was in a different room because she was so uncomfortable and everything. You know how it goes, right? And I'm sitting there going through, and I'm on Facebook, and some ad pops up, and it's you talking about land and how to calculate how much density or how many lots a parcel can actually yield. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And so I started digging in, and ultimately I ended up calling your team and connecting into your program. So yeah.
Okay. Blake, by the way, I know that was a while ago. By the way, for all you those that are listening, one thing I'll openly admit at Vestrite is we have not done a good job of a company of going out and collecting testimonials or interviews like this, and we need to improve. And so, but the reason I'm bringing that up right now is because Blake, it was a while ago that you signed up for Vestrite. Do you remember when it was that you came across? It was probably an ad, me talking about our business model or something. Do you remember how long? When was that?
I believe it was the very end of 2021
Okay.
that I saw that ad and joined Best Right. I'm almost certain it was the very end. If it wasn't the very end of 2021, it was the very beginning of 2022.
Okay. All right. Um, so okay, so you have this piece of land. You're like, hey, I think could I do something with this? Can I develop it? And so you start searching social, whatever, search engines, and somehow you come across one of our ads, however it was. And so, but at least what I've seen and what I know for myself is sometimes jumping into something that you've never done before, let's call it the unknown, the unknown can be scary. The unknown can generate fear. And so I can only assume that you had, y- y- you had to be somewhat either skeptical about, can I do this, or is Cody slash Vestrite real? Like, were you skeptical at all? And if you were, tell me about it.
Honestly, I didn't know enough to be skeptical. So, like,
Okay.
I really, when it's all said and done, I would have not known how to qualify whether you were real or not, right? Other than
Okay.
when I called in and I talked to the people that are like trying to sell me on it, I'm like trying to make sure that this isn't some scam, right? That's about
Sure.
as far as I'm going because I tend to trust people probably more than I should anyways. At least that's
Okay.
what my wife tells me, right? And so um
Okay.
I I I've been scammed a number of times. And so this one was
Okay.
like another instance of like, okay, we got to make sure that we're not going to go spend all this money. And then in the end, it was like, what was that? Like, what just happened? Right.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I didn't have a frame of reference for any of this. So
Yeah.
you could have said just about anything that sounded logical. And I probably would have been like, okay, yeah, sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. All right. Fair enough. So, well, let me ask you this though. Did you have any type of insecurity or imposter syndrome on whether you could be successful doing it or whether you could do it?
I mean, I have always, I yes, bottom line is absolutely. So fundamentally, I've always believed that if somebody else can do it, then I can do it. Okay, so
Okay.
that's a
Good.
fundamental belief that I have. So like if anybody else is out there doing it, like you get up in the morning and put your pants on the same way that I do, right? And so I
Yep.
believe that is like the only thing that would differentiate the two of us. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I can do it. If Cody can do it, I can do it. If David can do it, I can do it, and so on, right? And so I'm running full steam ahead and saying, hey, if there's a success story of somebody doing it, why can't I be the next success story to do it? And that really that has in some ways in my life that has helped me because it's let me put blinders on and just go straight ahead. And in other ways, it hurts because I put those blinders on and I don't look at what's going on around me to realize that hey, I created a much worse situation than I had to for myself.
Yeah.
In this
Yeah.
instance, it
Okay.
was good that I was maybe overly confident to begin with and put those blinders on and just went straight forward with it. There's
Okay.
a I can't remember what it's called, Cody, but it's like the Griner curve or something like that. But anyways, it talks about how when you start out with a new skill set of any sort, you always start thinking like I can do this, like I got it, and then you start going, you peak what they call Mount Stupid, and then you start going down into like the valley of despair, right? Which is like
Mm.
crap. Like I didn't realize how hard this was going to be, all the things that we're gonna, and you're just like spiraling out of control, right? In your own life, in your own mind, whatever. And you're trying to get to a point of saying, okay, I realize how difficult this is now going to be and how much I have to apply myself to try and get to that next step. And then you
Uh,
really start making incremental progress on who you are. Anyways, I can look up the curve for you. It's pretty interesting
that's awesome.
psychological study.
That's really, by the way, I think it's a gift that you say, if they can do it, I can do it. Cause I know a lot of society doesn't think that way. A lot of society um, has more like limiting beliefs or scarcity mindset. And so that's a huge gift. But also, I think there's a flip side to that coin in that with that mindset, you can also get yourself in trouble. You can also, oversimplify things and realize later, oh, maybe it's not that simple. And I believe with the little bit you've shared with me, that's a part of your story. And we'll talk about that today. But,
Yeah, yeah.
um, which, I know you're a lover of Jesus like myself. We're both believers, and I'll speak for myself. The different trials and tribulations I've had in my life, and if I started rattling them off, there's been some pretty big ones. I wouldn't take any of them back, man, because like those times is what really sculpted me, right? Those are, as long as I'm willing to come out the other side with not a victim mentality, and rather I'm willing to come out the other side and reflect back and learn and grow. Like, man, like you know, I mean, I could get into crazy stories, but just, like because I know you went through some financial stuff, which we're going to talk about, but like even, you know, when I lost almost all my net worth, you know, like I don't regret that, man. Like I'm glad I went through it. And so, but I think through our faith, we can have gratitude in the midst of pain.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%. I agree. I mean, I believe that God sculpts us through the hard times. Like, I don't think we learn much in the good times, and it's the hard times that refines us and produces the gold that He's looking for, right?
Yeah, that's good. So just real quick, just so everybody understands. So from the time, because it sounds like you were like, hey, Cody can do it, I can do it. I just need to get on a call with these guys and make sure, you know, they're legit. So from the time you saw that ad to the time that you signed up, sounds like it was pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, it was days. I mean, look, this is I'm gonna say this because it's like true. Hopefully it doesn't come across this as like an offense by any means, but the sales team was very high pressure, right? They were like, listen, if you don't sign up today, then the price is going to double, all this different stuff, right? They're doing the whole fudge strategy, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't care, right? Like, I'm going to go make a good decision, so you need to I need the time to go make that good decision.
Yeah.
And beyond that, it was, my wife and I talked about it. Probably a couple days later, we paid and signed up and got into the course and started rocking and rolling.
That's good. And for what it's worth, anybody hearing or listening, Um, back in the day, we used to outsource, our sales team. Today, our sales team's in-house. And I think back then we had something called the decisive discount, I think is what you're talking about.
Yep,
And it was to try to get people to make a decision on the call, which by the way, a lot of people, if they don't make the decision, because even though we don't do that today and our sales team's in-house today, I want to be clear though, is I don't want our sales team to ever be kind of that used car salesman, meaning that I actually want them to care about the people they're on the call with. But I will say, and Blake, this might not apply to you, but I will say for a vast majority of people, you're actually doing them a favor by some people, you know, the unknown is scary. Making that leap of faith is scary. And sometimes people need a bit of a push because if you don't give them a bit of a push in the back, they're never gonna level up. They're never gonna get uncomfortable. And like one thing I'm still learning every day is to be comfortable with being uncomfortable because if I'm not uncomfortable, I'm not growing. And so,
it's good.
so anyways, for what it's worth, there's still some context behind that high pressure or, you know, kind of pushing people that I think is healthy, but never to a point where it's you know, coming across is that we don't actually care about the person on the other line. Right. So, um,
Sure.
anyways, whatever. Um, okay, so all right, so you jump in, and the team, by the way, has a list of questions here for me. Just help me as I do this interview. Um,
Cool.
so all right, so you sign up, whatever, into 21, first part of 22. Um, Tell me about like that first. I'm going to say something right now. This business model, as Blake knows, is not an instant gratification business model. All right. Yes. Does this business model have the opportunity to generate substantial wealth? Does this business model allow you to kind of commingle your personal life and business life from a standpoint you can do it remote and all that? Yes. Is this business model like, I don't know if you ever heard me say this, but you know, there's a lot out there what I'd call a get rich quick scheme. Okay.
Sure.
And I've always said we're not a get rich quick scheme. Okay. And so at the same time, someone challenged me on that a couple of years ago and they said, okay, Cody, you're really not a get rich quick scheme, but this business model does allow you to potentially generate a lot of wealth quicker than many other business models out there. And I said, yeah, that's fair. That's true. Right. So with this next question, I'm going to ask you, I think in a lot of, because a lot of people are instant gratification, like just they want instant gratification. And I'm going to tell you, if that's you, this business model is not for you. Okay. I'm also going to tell you that um, I know very few people in my life. Actually, I don't know anybody in my life that I can think of that has accomplished amazing things in business or generated a substantial amount of wealth with an instant gratification mindset. Okay. So I just the two just don't align. And so this question I'm going to ask you is that, a lot of guys out there would say, so tell me about the first 30 days, Blake, after you signed up, or Blake, tell me about the first 60 days or 90 days. But that's not how our world or our model works. More my question to you, Blake, is tell me about your first year after you signed up with Vestrite. Just tell us about that first year. I remember one thing you said to me years ago that has always stuck with me that I'm going to bring up. And I'm also going to share with you something that went through my own head back when you were newer into the program. But tell us about that first year.
Yeah, so I mean, I hit the ground running, right? Like I didn't know how else to do it. It was like consuming all the training modules as quickly as possible. Every time I had a question, I'm posting it in the group or hopping onto the Q&As and discussing them and I'm just like trying to refine my understanding of this and what is going on. And so I'm a very hands-on person. So we could sit in a classroom all day long and I don't that setting is fine with me, but I always do better like boots on the ground. Let's get something done here. And so within a couple of months, I'm, you know, I'm talking to an attorney. I'm going through the contract. I'm working with title companies, talking to title companies, trying to figure out what we're going to do. I'm pulling together lists, trying to figure out how am I going to start finding properties. And I start really working on what I would consider to be low hanging fruit. So some on market deals, and going after stuff in an area that I was in that was on market and seeing if I could find anything that would make any sense there. And and so, I immediately started negotiating with people, right? Like I had this ridiculous contract and it's a great contract. It's just like, I don't know anything about contracts, right? And now all of a sudden I'm negotiating a 30-page contract with sellers and so on, right? And I'm like, I'm doing what I can to figure it out. And when I don't know, I'm calling it audible and either going to my attorneys or going back to the group and saying, hey guys, what's going on here. And and really it was within the first year I had 8 properties under contract for development. And I was all except for maybe 2 of those properties. Well, I probably had more than 8 over the first year, but several of them fell through early on or whatever. But I had 8 like that were moving forward, and all but I think 2 of those I had builders signed up for also. So like I had the other side of that contract negotiated and in place, right? And we were moving down the road, right? I had engineers and consultants and everybody that I'm working with. I'm talking to city council members. I'm like all of a sudden I'm like, I'm doing this, right? Like it's
Yeah.
happening. And that was within the first year. So I mean, I was I
So we're
was
gonna
going
hit
and going
what
hard.
happened on all those deals in a minute, okay? But in the first year, you're building your network. You got whatever 10 deals under contract. You have 8 of them builders signed up for, except 2. Like you're rocking, okay? I remember talking to you back then, Blake, and there's 2 things I remember. One, you saying this is much easier than I thought it was gonna be, is one thing you said to me. Okay. Or you said it was simpler. You said it was much simpler than you thought it was going to be. Okay. I remember you saying that. And I think we actually have it recorded you saying that. And then 2, let me tell you about my own imposter syndrome. You were a year into the program or something, and you have more deals. You got way more deals done in that year than I did. Okay. And I had imposter syndrome about that. I was like, dude, what? I mean, I was proud of you. I was happy for you. I was excited for you, which you knew. But I was like, dude, what the hell am I doing wrong? And so, but you just rocked right out of the gate. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the deals you were working, you had something like $30 million in paydays and profits on the board with all those deals. Wasn't it something like that?
Yeah, I think it was a little higher than that, but it was in the 30 million number. I think it was like 33 or 34 or something, but either way, yes, it was. I mean, every single one of those deals that were committed at that point, meaning I had a contract on both sides and I was moving forward with them. There was, yeah, more than $30 million in profit.
I'm gonna leave that loop open of all those deals you were doing, and I want to jump over to so were you still I think you were still doing your IT job full time too as well, right?
No, not by that point. So within the first year, I had already quit my IT job. So probably after I got like 4 things under contract on both sides, A and B side, I then said, "You know what? I'm gonna apply all my efforts and attention to doing this." And I quit my IT job. And there was a number of things happening anyways. I was probably gonna have to leave the company I was at because it wasn't going so well. It's like, you know what? Let's just like ride off in the sunset, see how it goes.
Yeah. Do you mind me asking what you were making in the IT space?
I was consistently making around 300,000 a year,
Okay.
consistently, I mean, some years were a little better, but somewhere around that.
So 300 that's a good day job, man. So
Great.
talk about a man that talk about a man that is willing to get uncomfortable or is goes all in. Uh, so let's just guess that 6 months into it, you go full time, what we call LDP, land with development potential model, and you give up that 300 grand a year or whatever. And by the way, Blake, I can only assume based upon AI, you knowing AI so well, like at our company, Allied Development, we're constantly figuring out new ways to implement AI. So I can only assume that that's serving you very, very well today. So that's super exciting and what a blessing for sure. Um,
Yeah, no doubt.
so okay, but let's just say in that first 6 months, you have your day job. Like, if you were to guess, how many hours do you feel like you were putting in a week or a month or whatever above and beyond your day job in that first 6 months?
The challenge, so I just wanna be clear about a little bit of a challenge for me guesstimating this. At the time, the job that I had was very undemanding, which was part of the reason that I was, like, needing to leave is because there was little happening in the company or in though I worked attached to a sales team, very little happening there. So, like, every week, I maybe was spending 20 or so hours a week actually working my 9 to 5, right? So, anyways, all that freed me up and gave me a lot of potential to do some of these other things, which is great. But I would say that on a weekly basis, especially as well, there's oh, sorry. I need to step back for just a second. So a deal, like the actual mechanisms of a deal are not you just go, 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 go the whole time. Go hard at the beginning of a deal while you're trying to get under contract. You're trying to find negotiate, get the attorneys in agreement. You're getting your engineer on board and all this stuff. Like you're pushing hard. And then it's a hurry up and wait situation for the most part. Right. And so you're waiting, and all of a sudden something drops, and then you're another full court press as hard as you can for a couple weeks, and then it's like, okay, drop, everybody just wait. And so there's a lot of that in this. So it's hard because it's so lumpy in that regard. It's hard to say that I was just saying, I was averaging this amount of time or whatever, but I would estimate that I was probably spending somewhere between 16 or so hours a week trying to learn this and trying to get deals under my belt and start working through things and the realities of the actual motions of a deal. So, anyways, every
That
deal
makes
is going to be
sense. Yeah,
different,
no, it's
but
good.
they're going
And
to be
I want to touch on what Blake was speaking about just a moment ago is, you know, when you're out there sourcing deals, marketing to those landowners, you get one of them to raise their hand, they're interested in selling, or you might here and there do an on market deal. I know, that's also an opportunity, but he said one drops, meaning that okay, they're ready to go. So now you're working through the contract with them, attorneys are involved, and then you got to get your engineer hired, get them up and going. And so up front, when a deal, what Blake said, drops, is where you're kind of going all in to get that deal put together and signed up and get your consulting team hired, which, like I advise people to use full service civil engineers, but what Blake said then is then it's hurry up and wait, because from the time we sign up a deal to the time that that deal gets entitled or approved for development, is where the majority of the timeline lies related to these deals. And Blake, correct me if you think I'm inaccurate, but at least in my 23 years of experience, during that time, like I interviewed another success story, I don't know, not too long ago, and he was talking about, this guy made like 2.6 million on his first deal, but he talked about, once the deal was signed up, he probably only spent 5 hours a week or something on that deal, because the reality is the consultants are doing the heavy lifting. They're doing the majority of the work. And so, you're heavily involved in the beginning, getting the deal signed up. If you don't use a real estate agent, you're heavily involved in getting the deal sold. But that entitlement process, at least in my experience, is not heavily involved for someone like Blake or I. Is that fair to say, Blake?
Well, I think it is fair if you're using full service engineers. I did not do that, and I haven't done that except for once. So I tend to be more involved ultimately. But yes, I would agree that you'd be a lot less involved.
Yeah. So, and what we mean by full service engineers is everywhere we are in the country, we go and find out who are the best 3 engineering firms in the town, and that will provide a full service, meaning that they'll oversee everything to get it entitled. Because for us, we're trying to kind of get on to the next deal. But all right, cool. So Blake, what I want to do is let's jump to, you told me real briefly, but I know there was your first deal that you made a big payday on, right? You made a 7-figure payday. And so when was it, that first deal that you made that big payday on, which we'll get into the numbers later, but do you remember approximately when that was that you got that deal under contract?
That deal came together and fell apart a number of times. I can tell you when I sold it. I don't know. It would be hard for me to say exactly. It was sometime in 2022 that I got it under contract.
Okay.
Probably, I don't know. I'm going to say like May, April timeframe if I had to guess.
Okay, let's just say mid 22 under contract. When did that deal close? When did the payday come in?
In October of 2023.
Okay, so it came in October. Let's just say a year and a half. Okay, give or take, whatever.
Yeah.
And so, but you said that deal was up and down, and I want to hear about that. And it was in and out, hot and cold, fell apart, came together. Like, um, can you touch on that a little bit? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I had it was really on the buyer side, so the builders, right? Like I had 3 different 3 different buyers signed up at different times. So initially we started out, we had one buyer. I didn't know anything, okay? And so this buyer comes to the table and basically says, "Hey, listen, I'm your guy, right? Like I am the development expert around here. I know everything about everything. I can do it all. I'll take care of it all for you, and like I'll have this thing purchased from you in no time. Let's go." And so signed a contract with this guy. This was early on, and as you can imagine, I'm still consuming material from your course. I'm learning about all the ins and outs of it, whatever. And I'm, it was a terrible deal. It was a terrible contract. Basically, he had, I don't know, it was over 240 days of due diligence and then like no commitments after that. And this guy was basically like, really, when we got down to it, he was just doing what I was trying to do. Right. So he was like now
Mm.
sitting in the middle of a transaction further. And he was trying, later on, I found out he's trying to sell this project to NVR or Ryan Homes. And so I'm like, but you signed the contract, you're tied to the hip. And this guy was like crazy unreasonable about all kinds of stuff. This project specifically had an easement that was required to get utility, specifically sewer, out to the property. And and he was like, "You got to go get this easement." I'm like, I can't get this easement. Like I talked to the neighbors, they're not interested. Just run this in right of way. And he's like, "We're not doing it. You need to go get the easement, or I'm discounting the price by hundreds of thousands of dollars." And I'm just like, okay. So I'm like talking to the neighbors, trying to figure stuff out, right? Like, anyways, ultimately this guy canceled the deal, and then I got under contract with Meritage Homes. And Meritage and I ran for a while on the deal. They had a 90-day due diligence on the deal. And if I recall correctly, I think they extended due diligence by like 30 days. They needed to extend it for some things that were going on relative to them making a decision on the property. Again, I had no idea what I was doing. So now I listen to myself say this stuff. I'm just like, what is wrong with you? You know, smack yourself upside the head. But anyways, then they canceled the deal a day before that 30 days was over. So you know, I'm now further stuck in this deal, and trying to find somebody that wants it, right? And at this point, like it really ended up being that it was like a tertiary market, and we're there wasn't a lot of development happening in the market anyways, and so we were kind of trying to open it up and attract developers into the market, and that comes with a lot of challenges, bottom line. And
Shit.
so
Yeah.
I finally found somebody that wanted to purchase it, and I mean, they basically we had like 60 days. It was like a 30-day due diligence, close in the other 30. And the reason for that is because I at this point I got all the entitlements done. I was done, right? I had paid for all
Mhm.
the engineering. I had well, I shouldn't say that. The CDs weren't done yet, right? But I have preliminary
Yeah.
plat stamped, ready to go, all the commits from all the different utility districts and everything. They were all there in place. And so it was kind of a, you know, a deal that was served up to somebody at this point. This guy got it for just a great deal ultimately, because I'm like, I gotta move this thing, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm running out of time, and I spent tons of money now of my own personal money, and I gotta move it. So yeah, those are really kind of the three different
Okay.
buyers that I had along the way.
So there's a few things I want to point out based on what you just communicated. One, you got this deal under contract within, I don't know, 4 to 5 months of signing up for Vest Right. So it was early in the game. Two is, by the way, was this an on-market deal or an off-market deal?
This was off market.
Okay, off-market. And so how did you get them to raise their hand? Was it a cold call, direct mail, knock on the door? Like how did you get them to raise their hand?
This one almost is like not fair because it was like a friends and family, like somebody that I knew that had some land that needed to sell it, right?
Okay.
Or that wanted to sell it, I should say. So it's not quite fair
Okay.
to it wasn't a regular marketing channel that I
That
would get
makes
this through.
sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But there's a few things I want to make sure I point out in what you communicated. One is he signed this deal up in April or May of 22. And I want to make sure everybody understands there was a peak during that time in the market. Blake mentioned this was a tertiary market project. I want to be open in saying that during that time, we were also doing tertiary market projects. Okay. Because what happened was back then we couldn't sell projects quick enough. Everybody wanted to buy our deals. Interest rates, people were getting loans at, 3%. Like money was free. It was crazy what was going on. Okay. And so, but I'm going to tell you, come mid 22, things started changing. All right. I would say, because right now, today, we're sitting at January 2026. Okay. And from mid 22 to late 22 through today, the market hasn't even been remotely comparable to what it was during that time that came to an end mid 22. And so what's hard is when you're out acquiring deals and you happen to acquire deals at the peak and then the market takes a downturn, a lot of times your basis or what you're into the deal for, or what you're paying for it is too much. Okay. Based upon the market correction. I said to my team recently that I'm going to be open at my company, Allied Development, which is where we do what we teach at VestRight. We do this business model. The last 3 years, we haven't achieved our goals. Okay. And I tried to explain to my team, and which they understood, is that the last 3 years not hitting our goals is okay. Because here's the reality. Being able to survive the last 3 years in itself is a win. Okay. Not only have we survived, we haven't reduced our overhead. We've continued to build our team. because some people, when the market turns, they decide to sit on their hands. They started letting people off left and right. I know a lot of companies in our industry that have gotten rid of a bunch of people. And what happens is then when the market comes back, they're going to start rebuilding. And the challenge is that causes a delay. And so I'm proud of our company that we are primed. We are trying to pick up as many deals as we can right now, because Warren Buffett once said, sell when everybody else is buying, buy when everyone else is selling, right? And right now is the prime time to be picking up deals, because sooner or later the market has to turn, because the housing shortage crisis is only getting worse. But Blake signed up a deal that was at the peak. And so not only was he learning, but you then face the reality that the market was shifting in a downturn to where our buyers are becoming less motivated. I want to
Yeah.
say one more thing. See, what Blake and I do, where we go and we get deals under contract and then we go get them approved for development or entitled, is that we bring a lot of value to that project or to that asset. We increase the value of the asset by us doing that process, okay? Getting land approved for development. He had a middleman that tied him up, okay? And in some ways, it reminds me of wholesaling, okay? Is that you go and you tie something up and then you try to play middleman without actually bringing any value to the asset. And so then Blake was in a tough position where he had another hand in the cookie jar that was trying to make money, but yet was bringing no value to the transaction, was bringing no value to the asset. And that's where be very careful who you sign up with. In the same way that you do your due diligence on a piece of land you want to buy, you need to do the same due diligence on the people you're selling to, right? And so I just want to point that out. The market turn. And the last thing I want to say is related to tertiary. And I said we made the same mistake. When the market started correcting, we let a ton of deals go because the demand for tertiary projects cleared out. It disappeared. And it's like, man, how many times do I got to learn fundamental lessons? And that, Cody, the market was frothy. You got in tertiary, market corrected, tertiary went away. Like stick to the main MSA, stick to where, don't trailblaze, right? Like I tell our team all the time, we are not trailblazing. We're not trying to create new markets. We're not trying to create unique, special legacy projects. I want to go into markets that are our builders are already all over the market. And I want to do cookie cutter projects that are generic as can be, where everybody that's in that market building will buy the project because it's so generic. And so I would advise anybody, be careful about trying to be a trailblazer and opening a new market or doing, super unique projects where you limit your buyers. Because at the end of the day, you always need to know your exit strategy before you ever enter. Blake, does some of those takeaways make sense with what you communicated?
Yeah, 100%. I tell people all the time that I serve the market. I do not create a market. So, if I walk
Love
into
it.
an area
Love it.
and the market and there's not a market there, it's not for me to create. So, yeah, I totally get it. And we saw the downturn. Cody really started feeling it in our area closer to the end of 22. And so I had like
Yep.
all this stuff under contract, right? And then like somebody let the air out of the balloon, and I'm dealing with the reality of trying to learn how to be what I am, right? Like an investor while the market is now correcting. And it was, I mean, it's these 1-2 punches that you get all the time as an investor. It just happens on a much larger scale. So Cody, one thing that I will say to something that you said early on is this isn't a get rich quick scheme. The reality is that like what we're doing, while it does force appreciation on properties, it equates to a tremendous amount of risk. And
Mhm.
you may not have to shoulder all the risk, but somebody is going to take the risk. Somebody has to along the way.
Mhm.
And we see it more and more in these anti-development markets and everything that we're dealing with, that it's just like, man, like how long am I going to have to lobby to try and get this one project that's cookie cutter across the finish line and
Mhm.
so on. So it is it resonates everything you're saying. I'm with you.
Yeah. And see that let's talk about the risk for a second. So I've done a lot of different real estate models, right? And like, I would say this is much more risky than wholesaling, for example, right?
Yeah,
Because
agreed.
wholesaling, you really have no skin in the game. You're just trying to play middleman and make a quick buck by skinning something off the top between what you tied something up for and what you're going to flip it for. And so it's low risk, but also low returns, right? And so, but I agree it's more risky than that. But I would say it's less risky, much like not even in the same ballpark, way less risky versus you deciding to put a shovel in the ground or do the horizontal construction. Because if you do
Sure.
the horizontal construction of the streets, the utilities, sidewalks, all that, the amount of capital and debt that's required for that is substantially risky. I would even argue that it's potentially more risky than I would say it is more risky than home building. Here's what I look at, Blake, is I look at the risk reward ratio. What is the risk versus the reward? And I agree there is risk involved. Like even take what happened. And so like Blake had 10 deals his first year, 8 of them signed up with builders. Like the guy's rocking, he's brand new, he's learning through experience, but which well, let me say on the record, it doesn't matter how good, the coaching is or the program is. At the end of the day, that is just like a shortcut or like a foundation, but there's no way anything will ever replace experience, right? Is that no matter how good a program is, how good the coaching is, like there is things you're going to learn through experience, which I appreciate that Blake understood that. And he said it early on in this interview that he knows that. And so he goes all in and he's learning through experience. And that's why, he probably set the record. I know he set the record actually of vest right students as far as how many deals you put under contract in your first year. No one has did what you did. And so I respect that you saw the value in learning through experience. And so as we're going to get into what happened with all those deals in a minute, but I just want to point out that yes, you were new, yes, you were learning, but you also got caught by the market. Okay. And so that's where risk lies because however much capital was out into those 10 deals, like that's risk, right? But it doesn't compare, in my opinion, to the risk of you owning the property because we're in the business of controlling real estate, not owning real estate. Imagine if Blake would have closed on that land and owned it. Is now you're stuck. Now you can't walk away, right? Now you can't renegotiate the price. Now you can't renegotiate the terms. So there's a lot when you're in the business of controlling versus owning real estate, it does de-risk it a lot. And also the fact, like if you're to go and develop the land, put in, and create the finished lots, like I've done a lot prior in my career, like I don't miss all that debt, right? Those A&D loans, those acquisition and development loans. I don't miss that debt. And so we do this business model debt free, whether that's our own capital, investor capital, whatever it may be. We have no debt. We have no personal guarantees. And so do you agree with her? Do you agree with what I just said, Blake?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, I think that one of the things that I didn't understand early on is that no matter which way I slice it, we are getting into real estate investing. And that word investing
Yeah.
should be like in all bold, flashing red letters. Like I was told very early on by my parents, Blake, don't ever invest money that you can't afford to lose
Yeah.
because investments are never
Yeah.
guaranteed ever, right? And so
Yeah.
like people get into this, I myself, I don't need to talk about anybody else. I got into this thinking that I got this and I invested a lot of money that I could not afford to lose. And I put myself in a crazy
Yeah.
position. Now, if it all turns out great, you're walking away whistling Dixie, right? But what happens if it doesn't all turn out great? And so you're saying the same thing as like, and there's levels of investment, right? I don't invest like Warren Buffett invests because I can't afford to play
Yeah.
in his world. But so I would
Yeah.
never go out and start doing horizontal construction day one because I can't afford to do that, right? But can I afford to get
Yeah.
involved in entitlements and acquisition? Yeah, all day long I can afford to do that. In my world, I could afford it. Now, have I met plenty of people that can't afford it? Yes, I've met those people as well, right? And they need a different strategy, which I think
Yeah.
is cool that you guys offer. Very little skin in the game and things like that. But ultimately, every step that you take, you got to have a plan for like how am I investing wisely? Am I protecting myself in the end? So yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you, Cody.
That's good, Blake. You hit on something very important. So let's say you bring in friends and family money, or you bring in investor money or whatever, okay? You got to give up a piece of the pie, right? Because
Yeah.
those investors want a return on their money, okay? But another way to de-risk it, because some people are like, well, I don't want to give up any of the pie. I want to keep it all to myself. But Blake said something about not investing money you can't afford to lose. And I have a feeling there's a lesson learned there for you, Blake. I know it's a lesson I learned early on, um, not super early on, but halfway through my career, is I figured out that why not use investors' capital where they're investing money they can afford to lose. Okay. And so, yes, I got to give up a piece of the pie, but now the number of deals I can do isn't just limited to my own resources. I can now actually make more money with less risk because I'm using people's money that can afford to lose whatever it is they invested. And then the company's growth isn't just limited to my own capital. And nor is the value I bring to these deals is not capital. That's not what's in the toolbox that I'm carrying. The value I bring is I know how to find these deals. I know how to get these deals under contract. I know how to get these deals entitled, and I know how to sell these deals. That's the value I bring, right? Let someone else that has way more capital than I do, or today we use hundreds of investors. And so my investors might not have more capital than me, but I have hundreds of investors. And they're all investing a little bit of money that they can afford to lose, right? Thank Jesus, and in all the years, I haven't lost any of their capital. But my point is, if all of a sudden you get caught by the market and you were all in with all your capital, that can be really painful. So my suggestion to everybody is, Blake is spot on. Do not invest any capital that you can't afford to lose. Be willing to give up a piece of the pie. And in all reality, once you give yourself permission to give up a piece of the pie, it actually frees you up to do more deals, and it de-risks the model for you. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. But I'll
Okay,
also
cool.
say this, Cody, like, one of the things early on, and you may be so far removed from it that you don't feel this anymore, but when I first started, it was so overwhelming. Like, all the ins
Mhm.
and outs of this business and just the development side of it, I just was like, I mean, every time I got done with a module, I was just like, "Oh my goodness." It's just like, "What in the world?" Like, head spinning. How am I gonna absorb all this? How am I gonna deal with all of it? And then I go a little bit further down the road and I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm starting to get my hands around it. And then what's the next thing that enters the scene? Syndication. And again, my head is spinning and I'm like, oh my, how do I deal with all that? So it's like day one, you're just trying to learn the ropes. Like you trying to figure out how to also raise money. I promise you, because I went there, you're doing too much. Like you can't do all that well. And so anyways, that's why it's great to have a plan, right? To say, all right, I got this person that I can partner with to start. And then as I move along and I get more clarity around it, more idea around what I'm doing, then I can start focusing on other things. Like, although you say, Cody, that what you bring to the deal isn't capital, ancillarily you do, right? Through other people's money, you do bring capital to the deal. And I know a bunch of guys that could go out and do a lot of these deals and they're capital constrained because they've never figured out
Mhm.
how to bring in other capital. And so that is
Mhm.
something that, like, today, maybe you take for granted, maybe you don't, but it is a skill set that that your audience has to learn as they continue down the path of
Mhm.
investing. Again, an investor,
Yeah, that's
Warren
good.
Buffett didn't become a multi-billionaire because he invested all his own money. He
That's
started
right.
investing other people's
That's
money,
right.
right? And so, but starting out, I promise you, he probably only had a little bit and invested a little bit of his own money, proved his track record, and other people started investing in him, and so on. So it's precept upon
That's
precept,
fair.
step
Yeah, that's
upon
good.
step.
Yeah, I think that's good, Blake. I think it's if there's one thing, because I didn't start raising capital or have funds where I have hundreds of investors. I didn't start doing that until 2021, right? So I'd already been in the business 19 years.
Yeah.
And Blake, if there's
Wow.
one thing if I was to do it, if there's one thing if I was to do it, and for us, it didn't take us that long to figure out how to do it, right? But like, I wish I would have, one of the things when I journal every morning is, or once I have a weekly page and a daily page. And in my weekly page, one of the boxes says, what am I going to learn this week? Right. And in all reality, I wish I would have learned how to raise capital much earlier in my career than I did. Right. Because once I committed that I was going to learn how to do it, like anything else that's uncomfortable, once you commit that you're going to learn it's not overwhelming how long, because I can even learn how to raise capital. Once I figured it out, I looked back and I was like, man, why did I hold back from doing that for so long? Like, I never should have. And so, but that's also because, Blake, you signed up, gosh, man, over 3 years, 22, 23, 20, you signed up over 4 years ago, right? And so, like, a lot has changed at VestRight since you signed up. From, now we have 3 different live calls per week, not just one. Now we don't have a Facebook group. We have a whole community. We have, our programs have been completely revamped and amplified. We're continuing to come out with updates and new versions to our program. But, one thing we do today, which I think is a good path for a lot of people, and I want people to go do their own deals just like you did, or just like many other students did. But there is a logical reason to potentially not start there, right? And so that's why, a few years ago, we opened up our partnership program where you can go find the deal, get the landowner to raise their hand, and then we'll take it from there, right? We'll negotiate the contract, we'll entitle it, we'll sell it, and we'll capitalize it, and then we'll cut you in on the payday. And so I never want anybody that comes into VestRight, or anybody that doesn't sign up for VestRight, or to go come do what you and I do, for their excuse or reason to be they don't have capital. Because Allied stands behind VestRight, in that if you bring us a good deal, we will capitalize it, right?
Yeah.
And so, more I think about it, that's huge for people, because, when my first 18 years, 19 years, it was, you're right, a little bit of my capital in the beginning, friends and family, like, we were scraping dollars together, right? And so, I'm really glad you brought that up. Yeah, it's today. Yeah, we have all these investors, but yeah, it wasn't always that way, for sure. It wasn't always that way.
Yeah.
So, all right. So real quick, and then we got to move on. So do you mind telling me what state that deal was in?
Tennessee.
And how many,
Yep.
you remember how many acres it was?
That deal was
acres?
73-ish acres. Yeah.
How many lots?
72 lots in the end.
272 lots. And then approximately how much capital did you guys have invested in the deal?
Probably by this point, I probably had over, well, just in that deal, maybe 120,000 in the deal in total.
So you had 120 in the deal. And then when it was all said and done, and after all the challenges you went through with buyers and the middleman trying to make a quick buck and the market turning on you and blah, 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 after all of that, what did you end up making on that deal?
That was the first deal that I sold that I had that 7-figure, like you were talking about. You said you wanted to hear about that. So that was a 1.85 number, as far as a payday goes. So it was really, really, really good. Now that would be more gross. And then I had, to pay off a lot of the debt and stuff that I had accumulated, but still, freaking, I sold something for over 7 figures. That's amazing, right? It was cause for success, and I was excited and celebrating, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because then that's what I'm saying is that, yes, there's risk. It would be crazy if there wasn't risk, but when you look at risk reward, you can't show me very many things out there where you can invest 120 and in 18 months, because let's just say that 1.85 gross, check from the title company, but you had 120 into it. So let's just say you made $1.7 million, right? Like, you can't show me very many things out there where you can invest 120 and in 18 months get your 120 back plus make $1.7 million. But so that sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. But you guys got to understand is that it's all about the right deal, right? Like, a deal could have development potential, LDP, it could have land development potential, but guess what? That doesn't mean you're going to turn 120 into $1.8 million. Is that it's it's it it it's the right properties, right? And so like we've been pushing on people. Can we tried shotgunning for a while, shotgunning properties and having all these leads come in, right? And 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 the reality is most of those deals are garbage, right? Like to where we now strictly focus on sniping, right? And we just snipe. That's all we do because um it it's got to be the right deal. It's got to be the right
Yeah.
piece. And so um but I just want to salute you on sticking with it. Um so um so just to recap for everybody, signs up into 21, first part of 22, got this deal. Well, in his first year, he got like 10 deals under contract, 8 of them sold to buyers. Market turns on him into 22, but he had this one particular deal that he signed up in April, May of 22. um, Put 120 grand into it, went through some challenges with buyers, ended up exiting it in October of 23, approximately 18 months later, and got his whatever his 120 grand back plus or his investors 120 or whatever. And then he made approximately $1.7 million on top of that. So that's super cool. But Blake, now I want to shift. Okay. I want to talk about, so that's great. That's a cool deal. Um, but huge win for you. You're still doing this full time, is my understanding. Is that right? You're still doing this full time.
Yep.
And like approximately how many deals do you have control of right now or under contract?
Um, I I have one right now.
Okay, one. And I think you
Yeah.
told me off air that if you were to take the whole land game you've been, involved in over the last, 3 years or something, I think you said probably you've made around 3 million total or something like that. Was that right?
Yeah, if like we're looking at kind of net profit, after all the costs and everything like that, it's probably been a little over 3 in total that I've
Yeah.
made. And some of that, I mean, we can get into the details of a lot of it, but bottom line is like, um, it's have you ever been to, I don't know if you have before, and I apologize if this is a bad example, but if you've ever been to a casino before and you're like
Oh
playing, I
yeah.
don't know, let's say you're playing roulette or whatever, it doesn't matter, and you're like making some money, right? Like it's going good. What is your natural tendency, inclination? It's to put more in, right? It's like, well, crap,
Yes.
man, if I made $1,000 doing this, let me put more into this and keep going. Or, where else if I did this good at roulette, let me go try my hand at blackjack or whatever, right? And so you're diversifying, putting in more money, whatever. I find myself in the same position and I'm starting to invest in bad things, stuff that I don't know
Okay.
about, right? Like I'm I'm learning about it. I'm trying to figure it out just like I did on the land development side. And so like I'm doing deals on the land development side. I'm investing in other stuff that's, housing related. I'm getting into
Yeah.
multifamily, right? Like I'm again, like an investor, I'm looking at all these
It's
things and saying, all
smart.
right, well, I want to invest more and more money. I want better returns on my capital.
Yeah. And so I don't know that I would get so like Blake, I love what you just said because I think everybody so like I have tons of friends that buy or build, say, multifamily or storage or whatever, right? And then they hold these things, okay? And they're in the cash flow game. Okay. And so
Mhm.
not passive because they're operators. So if they think they're passive, they're not passive. They're active in the business, but they're generating cash flow. And so, but it's a slow game to generate substantial wealth because it takes a long time to generate wealth in that model. But it's nice because you're generating cash flow along the way. Okay. A little bit of cash
Yep.
flow. I think everybody should have one way that they generate a lot of capital and they should have another leg to their business of how are they investing that capital to generate. I prefer passive income. So I would rather invest in someone else's apartment complex than probably do it myself because I want my cash flow to be truly passive, meaning I'm not involved at all. And so, Blake, I'm so glad to hear you do that, where you're taking some chips off the table, you're investing in different things, you're diversifying your portfolio. But what's nice is we have this little thing you and I do, the LDP model that generates capital. But then I suggest you take some of those chips off the table, okay, and you invest them in other things and get diversified and have passive cash flow potentially coming in. So I think that's a great advice, or at least something you're bringing up there for others to hear.
Yeah. And that's really, but it's like every other investment strategy, right? Is like if you don't know what you're doing, you can get in over your skis or you can invest improperly or whatever. And I found myself in that sort of a situation, right? Where there are things that were going well that I was investing in, other things that weren't going so well. And this is a good point for me to pause and say something, Cody. I would agree with what you said with one minor caveat. I think that, and this is actually a mentor of mine that told me this, that I really appreciate that he told me some years ago. He said, Blake, in business, you need to have at least two income streams. You need to have
Hmm.
short term income that's just run rate, that's continually coming in that you can count on.
Yep.
And you need to have long
Yep.
term income. I will tell you from
Hmm.
my experience, land development entitlement model is definitely long term. And like,
Hmm.
if you are trying to feed your family and you're waiting on the next land development deal to close, that is a like, call me because I will be your support group because it is horrible.
Right.
It
So
is
I would say I
horrible.
wouldn't call it long term. I would still call it short term, but I wouldn't say it's 30 or 60-day money. I would just call it 18-month, 2-year money. Okay. And so if that classified as long term, we can call it long term. But here's what I'd say
Yeah,
to everybody. I'm glad Blake brought this up. If you're doing our model or thinking about doing our model, unless you have a large nest egg that you can rely on for your living, do not quit your day job, at least until your first substantial payday comes in. Okay. Don't put yourself in that position. Okay. Is that you don't want to be scrambling to figure out how you're going to feed your family. Um, do not give up your daily income until you see the payday actually show up in your bank account. Right. And then you can decide what you want to do because you have safety. Right. And so I think that's really good. But I think, Blake, for, you've made a little over 3 million or whatever, and I've made however much money is that I just know I can build my passive income quicker if I have a capital versus if I don't have capital and how long it takes to build passive income to a point that I can quote, quote, retire on it or live on it.
sure.
All capital is a tool, right?
Yep.
And so thanks for giving everybody that advice because I totally agree. Because but Blake, you've got you're a brave individual. You believe in yourself and you made that leap of faith of jumping in full bore. Before a payday had come in, but you also had Tid and deals under contract, over $30 million of profit looked like to come in, and I can see why you did it. But I really respect the advice you gave, which is basically don't count your chickens before they hatch.
That's it. Yeah. 100%. Every one of these
Yeah,
deals that
that's
we
good.
work on, I mean, it's a reality. So like, even if I have earnest money that's hard or that is, is basically refundable to me from my buyers, like, I'm not going to build a business on like trying to steal other people's earnest money, right? Like, that's not how you
Yeah.
build a business. So that may be like a stopgap measure for me of like, stop the bleeding, the whole deal's going south, but it is not the, hey, how do I make wealth or how do I earn a good living,
Oh,
right? And that,
yeah. Like, you're not generating wealth through collecting your buyer's non-refundable earnest money. The
yeah,
goal with
exactly.
non-refundable earnest money is just to de-risk the model for you to where if your buyer doesn't close, it covers your capital you had in the deal plus maybe a little extra. But that is not how you generate the wealth. I totally agree with that. But real quick, because I want to talk about the 10 deals. When that payday came in, can you be vulnerable with me and share with me how that was for your family mentally, emotionally? Like, do you have the ability to go back there and tell me what that felt like?
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. Like, like, it's for the first time ever, I felt like I had financial freedom. Um, and that was it was amazing. I mean, I like, it's hard to put into words because at this point, Cody, and we haven't talked about it, but at this point, I was one of those guys who had no idea how I was going to feed my family, praying that a deal would close, right? Like,
Let's go there right
ev-
now, Blake. So
yeah. So I
your
mean,
first year,
I'm
yes.
sitting here, with all these deals that are collapsing around me, and it wasn't just because the market was turning. There are other dynamics in some of the deals as well. And so, we could go through, some of it was like a market changed all of their, in the midst of entitlement. a market that I had 4 deals in, 4 of my 8, 50% of my portfolio invested in, changed their ordinances and killed every single deal that I had on the table, right? Like,
Mm,
I mean, and it wasn't just me, it was a lot of people in that market, and it was a bloodbath, right, as a result. And yeah, could you probably hire land use attorneys, go sue the crap out of the market and make some money back and maybe get yourself whole again from the money that you spent? Yeah, but like, is it worth it? Is it worth the time, energy, effort that it's going to take to go there? So that's just one example, right? Of like, and all these deals required capital on my part. And so I'm
mhm,
out hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the first deal that I closed, I think we made like $1,000 on, and it was like not even enough to pay off all the debt that I had amassed at that point, right? And so
mhm,
we're sitting here, and it may have been a little bit more, but it put like enough money back into the coffers to say, okay, I can make it another 3 months, and that's it. After that 3 months, I do not have an option. It's sell sell the last remaining things that we had, because I had already gone through the motions of selling everything that I had, everything. Like, my kids talk about this still today. There's a car that I had bought. It was a Shelby Cobra GT 500 that I had owned for years and years. That was my it was very important to me in a lot of ways. And I had to sell it just to make enough money so that we could just so that we could live, right? And
mhm,
I'm doing all this just to try and keep the lights on, to keep it
mhm,
going. I'm and I mean, we were whittling. I had my wife and all of us. We were down to like, I know the kids need a new pair of shoes, but we can't afford that right now. You cannot
mhm,
buy that. Like, we've got to limit our expenses to like X thousands of dollars every single month, and that's it, because we got to make it to these next 3 months. Well, what's the plan after that, right? And
mhm,
and you're
mhm.
and anyways, this is where I was. That's why I say, if you find yourself in that situation, happy to be your support group, because I know how it is. And
Yeah.
I'm over here now. We get this big payday, and of that payday, there's $370,000 that I had to pay out immediately to friends and family. and
Mhm,
and so, we walk away with whatever the delta is off that. And one of the first things I did was tithed off that income, right? Like, we tried to be very consistent with that, and so we
amen.
tithed off it, and so we're left with whatever is, it was like 1.1, 1.2, something like that million left over. And this
Mhm.
is like, I'm a millionaire, right? Like that had happened. And
Wow.
it changed everything for me. And I know I have hindsight now, so I can tell you what it did, but I didn't realize that it was doing this, Cody. And it made me think that I was safe and everything's good now.
Uh,
And
what does that
and that
feel
was
like?
the
Like, what the word safe, I want you to tell me, explain what you mean by safe, but before you do, and please don't take this the wrong way, but all that pain you went through, because out of those 10 deals in the first year, did only one how many of those closed out of the 10?
out of those 10, there would be 2 of those that closed.
Okay. 8
Yeah.
deals fall apart. Okay. You owe people money because all these deals fall apart. This 30 some odd $1 million you had up on the board that was coming that made you like all gone. Okay. And
Yep.
let's just say, Blake, let's say it was a combination. And by the way, for whatever it's worth to everybody, what Blake explained about is the jurisdiction changed their ordinance and it destroyed 4 of his projects. There's a first time for everything. I've never had that. I've had jurisdictions change their ordinance, but I was already grandfathered in because my application was in. But we never get too deep in a deal prior to our application being submitted. But here nor there, ordinance change, market change, and quite frankly, dude, you're still new. You're learning. Like, whatever all the different reasons are that those 8 deals fell apart, they did. Okay, and it was painful. But I want to say 2 things. One, Blake, because you went out there and just got after it and you're you're experiencing, you're learning, you're experiencing, you do this program that creates this kind of foundation or whatever, but you're out there doing and experiencing it. You probably developed more of an understanding and a knowledge of the model in your first year than most people because you were out there repping and exercising it so much. And sure, which leads me to Blake, you probably learned more through those 8 deals falling apart than you did through the deals that went well,
100%.
right? 100%.
Yeah.
2 is I can only imagine that when that payday came in, and you used the word safe a second ago, which I want you to explain, that fruit or that win tasted so much better because of the pain you went through.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes,
Explain the word
100%.
safe to me.
I don't know. It's kind of emotional to explain the word, right? Like when it's all said and done, like Cody, it's one thing for me and you to talk about 30 million being cleared off the board. It's a whole nother thing to sit down with your family and tell them, guys, listen, like we have nothing, right? Like it's all gone. No prospects, or very few prospects. Remember that deal that I'm talking about had fallen through, and I was just trying my hardest to find somebody to buy it at this point. And
Yep.
it's just like, now you've got money in the bank account, you can pay off your debts, and it's like, okay, what are we gonna do, right? What do you want to do? Because we can do what we want to do now. I've got enough money to last us for years and years to come if we just want to go and retreat to a cave someplace or whatever, right? That's the idea that I mean when I said it made me feel safe. It made me feel like, okay, I can do this business model. It absolutely can work for me. I can keep making good money doing this. I can take care of my family. I can provide. I have enough money that if we get into a hard situation, it'll be okay. It gave me the confidence to take the next steps, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I would assume it's also provided you some freedom to where if you want to go learn some other things to diversify and, expand your knowledge is power, expand your investment strategy of how you invest. Like, it's really cool, I guess, to be in that. I probably take it for granted at this point, which Lord, I'm sorry. I shouldn't take it for granted, but that freedom, because the word freedom and safe can kind of go together. And so that's really cool. That's really good. I'm sorry that
Yeah, dude.
happened to you, right? But at the same time, I'm thankful you kind of went through it. Because it's made you, there's no way it didn't make you a better man today.
100%. And I tell people this all the time. I talk to a lot of people in real estate nowadays, and I tell people all the time, like, if there's one wish that I have for you, in fact, maybe it's presumptuous of me to say this to your audience, but if there's one wish that I have for you, it's that you fail often and fail forward. Because
Totally,
it
man. No,
is,
I'm glad you said it. And let me expand on that, Blake. If you think you're going to come into this business model and just have a bunch of wins and no failures, you're wrong. Because I've been doing it almost 24 years and I still fail all the time, right? But at least when we fail, like Blake said, we try to fail forward. We try to learn from it, grow from it, expand from it. But like you could talk to the richest men in the world, okay? They're all going to talk about their failures and how much they learned failing and how often they failed, right? Like if you want to create substantial wealth or become a millionaire or a billionaire or whatever, like you better get comfortable with failing because you're going to fail. And quite frankly, you're going to fail quite a bit. Um, it's just part of the process.
yeah, that's right. I heard a guy say a while back that if you want to become a millionaire, you got to deserve it. And
Yeah.
deserving it hurts. It hurts.
Yeah, I mean, it's the pain, it's the failures that it allows you to earn it.
Yeah, that's right.
Here's the reality. If you become a millionaire without failure, you either lucked out or it was given to you. I
Yeah.
mean, it just is what it is. All right, I got a few more questions for you, and I appreciate you, by the way, Blake, being vulnerable about. But the takeaway of all that, I would strongly suggest try to avoid investing capital that you can't afford to lose.
Yeah.
Blake brought up about don't give up your day job and don't count your chickens before they hatch until that first payday comes in. Don't invest capital you can't afford to lose. Um, whether that's bringing in investor capital or bringing in our company, Allied Developments capital, I don't care what it is. Yes, you're going to give up some of the payday, but it's well worth it versus the other side or like the pain that Blake expressed that he went through. And so I'm glad, Blake, you're sharing those life experiences so that other people can learn and grow from you. And I think that's really, really positive. Okay, I'm gonna ask you a few more questions. So, Blake, with all of that you shared, this has been a really good interview because you didn't just share the great stuff, you shared the pain too, which I knew kind of high level, and I wanted to make sure we captured that and we didn't avoid it. Okay. Because we don't want people in the model that aren't being realistic, right? And so, but with that, here's the question they have for you. Okay. Um, okay, if someone Blake, if someone's watching this and they're hearing your interview and they're kind of, let's just say they're on the fence. They're skeptical on Vest Right or the business model. Um, Let me first say to you, if you were to do it all over again, are you glad you dove in and learned the model?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Okay, 100%. If you were to give that person that's skeptical some wisdom through your own experiences, what type of advice or food for thought would you give them?
There's one thing that comes to mind right now, and I'm sure there's a lot more, right? If we had the time, I'm sure we could spend some time going through different things. But one thing definitely comes to mind for me, and that is that you have to have there's one reason that I see development being an old man's game. Most of the people I see in development are old men, right? Like gray hair, they've been through it for a long time. They're really wealthy, they're doing really great. Not you, Cody, but most of the people I see doing it, right? And
Well,
the
I'm
reason
bald.
for that yeah, but you're not old yet. The reason that I say that or that I see that is because what they had to learn is a staying power to stay in the market no matter what happens. And it takes
Yes.
young men and it turns them into old men to learn that, right? Like,
Mm,
don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I'm like an old man now, but I realize the wisdom that comes through that crown of wisdom of gray hair, right? As you go
mm,
through those things. And so come in, if you're going to get into this world, there's nothing wrong with getting in this world and then saying, you know what, that's not for me. That's okay. There's nothing
mhm,
wrong with that.
mhm,
There's nothing wrong with just making it another tool in your tool belt that you use along your investing journey. But if you're going to be in this world, if you're going to be like, this is where I put down my roots, you've got to have the staying power to get through the ups and the downs of the market because it will go up and down and your own career will go up and down, your strategies and everything. So realize I've said it, I'm just circling around the same things that I've said already. It's 100% an investment strategy. So take the chance and invest in yourself, no matter what it is. I
mhm.
don't care if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I want to go be this. Take the
Totally.
chance and invest in yourself first, and then
Yeah.
have the staying power to say, I'm going to do this. Like whatever I need to extract from this thing, I'm going to get it out of it. And that will, I mean, it will take you a lot further than just saying, yeah, let's see how it goes.
That's good. I had a few thoughts when you were just sharing that. I said earlier in this interview, as I was telling my team, just surviving the last 3 years is a win, right? That's that to be able to sustain the market. I had a second thought, and that, quite frankly, Blake, the majority of your career so far with the model has been in a down market. So I'm excited to see because it's going to turn. I'm excited to hear about your wins once it turns because uh, literally ever since you got into it, it's been basically a down market. And so that's pretty cool that you've sustained it. And it's been right from the get go. Another thing that popped into my head, it's just funny. Like you said, go gray. And I was like, I can't think of a president that didn't go gray if they weren't gray prior to being the president. Right. I
Yeah,
mean, doing
that's right.
great things requires a certain level or capacity of a human being. I'll take it a step further.
Yeah,
Even if you don't want to do entitlements full time, I think Blake would agree with what I'm about to say. Land is the foundation of real estate. No building you see out there, storage, commercial, apartments, houses, all of them started with land with development potential and entitlements. And so even if you don't want to do entitlements full time, if you're in real estate or want to be in real estate, just understand dirt is the foundation of real estate. And
one00%.
Blake and I have an advantage over, I would say, majority of real estate investors because we understand the foundation of real estate where quite frankly, a lot of others don't. It just causes you to see real estate in a different way. Would you agree with that, Blake?
I agree. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the first things that I remember whenever I started learning all this, Cody, is like when I started driving around my neighborhood, my place that I lived, everything, it's like my eyes were open to potential that I never even realized was there before, right? And many people don't see that because they're not on this side of the game. Don't get me wrong, you could look at a house and say, "Hey, I can rehab that and flip it." Well, what about taking one piece of land and turning it into 400 homes, right? Like, what about
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a big difference. And so it's just it is. I agree. I mean, it's the foundation of everything that we do. Land.
Yeah. Okay, so with what you and I do or what you've learned, what you're doing, what I've been doing, who is this not for? Like, who should not even entertain doing this? Does anybody come to mind or like an avatar or a way someone thinks or what they're trying to achieve? Like, who is this not for?
There's a lot of people that there's a lot of people that I met along my journey that it's not for, maybe I should say, right? And it seems like there's a couple things that make these people not the right fit for it. One is you don't have any money, it's hard to really play in this game, right? I mean, there's a few things that you can do here and there, but I'm serious. Like, if you don't even have like $10,000 to invest in yourself, you're probably not in a position yet to go do this. So I'd say that's
Mhm.
one for sure. Um, Secondarily, I would say that people that want like all that matters to them is about getting rich. That's all they want, right? Like that's their sole goal is like, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be rich. Every single one of those people that I see, they all wash up in it. Like they all don't make it.
Yep. Yep.
Because it's about the wrong thing. And so like
Yep.
I think if you look like Cody just said, if you look at land and you see how much potential it has, how beautiful it is, and how important it is to society and to commerce and to everything that we do, and you realize that it can be your canvas to create something beautiful. I think if you come in at it and you see how amazing it is what we get to do every day, building homes for families and generations to grow up
Yeah.
in, like that's something worth getting out of bed for every day. That's something worth
Mhm.
taking the blows for, right? Um,
Mm.
I think that is a difference. It's a differentiation between the people who are doing well and aren't. And I don't know everybody that's doing well. Maybe there's some people that that's their only motivation, but I've seen over and over again people who are coin operated tend to fall off pretty quickly.
It's good. Well, yeah, because their motivator is shallow and empty. Like on my wall here, it says PIF, purpose, impact, fulfillment. I can promise you money is just a tool. Money alone, you're not going to find fulfillment in. And so it's like if you don't have other motivators like some of the ones that Blake just mentioned, your chance of success actually decreases dramatically.
Yeah.
Because the motivation doesn't go deep enough, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I
That's
use the
right.
word wash up. You wash up quicker because the motivation isn't deep enough. All right, Blake, let me ask you this. So you came into this with no real estate experience. Someone's saying, "No, I can't get into real estate. I can't do this, that, and the other because I have no real estate experience." We've had several success stories with no real estate experience, but specifically related to you, what would you tell that person that is using no real estate as experience as a reason why they can't get in real estate? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's another one of the excuses that we make for ourselves, right? And this, I hope this doesn't come across as condescending by any means, but I tell my kids all the time, your excuses don't excuse you. That's what I'd say.
Mm,
That's
that's
simply
good.
what I'd say, right? You want to make the excuse, that's fine, but it doesn't excuse you in the end.
That's good. It's exactly right. It's just an excuse. It's
Yeah.
scarcity mindset, limited belief, um, imposter syndrome. You're exactly right. All right, so let's close this out, Blake. If you were to close this out with one sentence or one paragraph or whatever it is that's on your heart or in your mind, what would you say?
I would say first of all, Cody, I appreciate you. And whether you know it or sense it or feel it, I would not be where I am today without you doing what you've done. Not just building the course, but being personable, reaching out, being somebody who cares. Um, it matters. And so
Thanks,
I
brother.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. And and I'm thankful that in a world of people in real estate investing, especially who are all trying to go out and get everything for in a me mentality, and they don't want to open up and give anything to anybody else. I'm thankful that you did. It's made a
Mm.
difference. And so I appreciate it. And I don't want to leave.
When I tell people the whole reason we started Vest Right is because of what's on my wall, PIF, purpose, impact, fulfillment. You know, Vest Right is not a huge moneymaker for us, right? But it does bring us a tremendous amount of fulfillment. It does. Um, it's something that I'm proud of that'll be a part of my legacy. Um, and so I think the more we can get legacy focused, the more impactful life can be. And so I really appreciate you going out of your way to share that, and, going back to that feeling safe. Um, I'm glad I was a part of that journey in one way or another. So that's fulfillment, right? Um,
Yeah.
so thank you for that. All right, cool. Well, let's close this up. Blake, I just want to say thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for being vulnerable. I mean, thanks sharing about some of those hard times you did. And just being open and transparent. That's something we started that I asked you to do before the recording, and I thank you for doing that. I appreciate it very much, Blake.
Yeah, you bet, Cody. Be blessed. It was great talking to you, and I hope that anybody listening, that you take action and you invest in yourself.
Amen. All right, take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.